All right, everybody, breaking news. I'm beginning to think that Donald Trump might be in the Epstein files. Or rather, Jeffrey Epstein may be in the Donald Trump files at this point, because after the new dump that we just got from the DOJ today, it is not looking too good for Donald Trump. It is becoming increasingly clear why he has been desperately trying to block the release of these files, obviously since he's been in office, but for his entire political career, he's been acting squirmy around the name Jeffrey Epstein. It's worth pointing out a few things. Number one, Jeffrey Epstein died under Donald Trump's watch. This was not a Democratic administration. It was under Donald Trump's watch. Secondly, there are more photos of Donald Trump and Jeffrey Epstein than like me and my own grandparents at this point. I swear, dozens of photos of them at events together, pointing to young girls. And thirdly, Donald Trump fought tooth and nail for this not to be released, only for him and Mike Johnson to be subverted by a discharge petition. Just to run it back about 6 weeks. A few key members of the House, like Ro Khanna, Thomas Massie, Rand Paul, and Yasemin Ansari, they all got together and decided to force a discharge petition to release the Epstein files. We covered this relentlessly, and it got to a point where Trump and Mike Johnson literally got smacked in the face. They lost the vote so hard, they acted like they were in favor of the vote the entire time. Trump acted like he was in favor of the Epstein files the entire time. So on screen right now is a little bit of a meme. It's Donald Trump directly connected to Jeffrey Epstein. But there is a lot of truth to this as we begin to dig deeper into the files. What we know, the Justice Department released thousands of records today, but Pam Bondi is still saying that they're going to wait. They're going to wait over the next month to drip feed more documents, which is illegal. The Epstein Files Transparency Act specifically says all of them must be released on the 30-day deadline. Well, guess what? The 30-day deadline hit today, Friday, December 19th, and we still do not have all of the files. Here is Democratic Representative Ro Khanna explaining that there will be consequences. This was him last night explaining there will be consequences for Pam Bondi if we don't get all of these files. Take a look.
Tomorrow, by 11:59 p.m. on Friday, the Epstein files will finally be released because of my Epstein Transparency Act. We will see thousands of documents that we should have seen decades ago. 3 federal judges have ordered the release. As I'm speaking, dozens of lawyers on the national security team at the Department of Justice are preparing the documents for release. Let me be very clear. We need a full release. Anyone who tampers with these documents or conceals documents or engages in excessive redaction will be prosecuted because of obstruction of justice. We will prosecute individuals regardless of whether they're the Attorney General or a career or political appointee. We need full transparency and justice.
He said it directly. He said, we will prosecute people. It does not matter if they are the Attorney General. If you are stopping the release of this, if you are obstructing the release of the full documents through excessive retractions or other means, then you will be prosecuted. He has a lot of clarity about this.
Justice for the survivors. Tomorrow, finally, rich and powerful men who raped underage girls or who covered up for this abuse will be held accountable. The Epstein class needs to go.
I love that. The Epstein class. I mean, there are currently dueling economies, dueling classes that exist within the United States. There is the top 10%, the richest of the rich, who are, donating to campaigns, lobbying to get positions of power that they can then use to benefit themselves. Then there's the rest of the people, the rest of Americans, people like you and I who don't have the power, don't have the money to leverage and help ourselves, protect ourselves. I mean, a lot of Jeffrey Epstein's, let's say, clients, quote unquote clients, were suspected to be very rich men who were abusing their position of power. Now, this brings us on to the richest of the rich who abused the most power, Donald Trump. Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche told Congress earlier today that more documents would be released in the coming weeks. It's important to point out that Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche was Donald Trump's personal attorney throughout his campaign, and Todd Blanche is the one who did the closed-door meeting with Ghislaine Maxwell before she got transferred to a minimum security prison. So this goes deep. I am not a conspiracy theorist. I am not somebody who on this channel engages in conspiracies. I lay out the facts in the timeline, and the facts in the timeline of this case don't look too good. Let's check out the exact section that Donald Trump's name appears in the Epstein files. Now, about 90% of the released Epstein files were redacted. Legitimately, straight up redacted. So that could count as an excessive redaction under Ro Khanna's language, but what's really uniquely the problem right now is that Pam Bondi and Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche won't release the entirety of the files. Continuing, the Epstein files that were released today had one uniquely catastrophic section for Donald Trump, and that's what I want to focus on throughout this video. Just for some context, Donald Trump and Jeffrey Epstein were best friends throughout the peak of Epstein's sex trafficking. Donald Trump knew what Jeffrey Epstein was doing. According to Epstein, he said that Donald Trump knew about the girls. He even said that Donald Trump ran face first into a pane of glass, like nose to glass, because he was watching girls swimming in Jeffrey Epstein's pool. This document reads, quote, "While these visits made Doe extremely uncomfortable," referring to Jane Doe, "while these visits made Jane Doe extremely uncomfortable, Epstein and Maxwell made her feel she could not refuse them. During this time, Epstein started to pay for voice lessons for Doe and insisted that Doe could not advance her career in any way without him." So Jeffrey Epstein immediately, just disgusting, disgraceful power dynamic abuses from Jeffrey Epstein. And this Jane Doe, obviously an unidentified victim, we don't know her real name, this Jane Doe wanted voice lessons. This actually just sickens me. Wanted voice lessons. Jeffrey Epstein decides to leverage her hope and her dreams and her career to say that if she doesn't do what he wants, then she's not going to advance her career in any way. This ends up just ruining her life. Okay, to continue. During one of Doe's encounters with Epstein, he then took her to Mar-a-Lago, where he introduced her to its owner, Donald J. Trump. Introducing 14-year-old Jane Doe to Donald Trump, Epstein elbowed Trump playfully, asking him, referring to Doe, "This is a good one, right?" Quote, "This is a good one, right?" About a 14-year-old girl who he was abusing, not only sexually, but with power dynamics. I just find that, as someone who was a kid and who had a lot of like dreams and like, I used to take like piano lessons or whatever, I just see myself in this. Like, this is fucking disgusting. To continue though, he says, "This is a good one, right?" Trump smiled and nodded in agreement. They both chuckled and Doe felt uncomfortable, but at the time was too young to understand why, was too young to understand what they were laughing about, what they were joking about, what they were referring to. To continue back to this, that may provide, it's not funny, but that may provide some context as to why Donald Trump has been a squirmy little bitch every single time the Epstein files are brought up over the past 6 months or so. Ever since Elon Musk. Well, I guess you can trace it back to Pam Bondi saying the Epstein files are on my desk. But the real catalyst for this popping back up was when Elon Musk was mad about the big ugly bill and he said, Donald Trump is in the Epstein files. That is when this all started to blow back up and it was directly in their face. But this really does explain a few things. Donald Trump's squirminess, his repeated attempts to just like demean women journalists who bring up Epstein. He calls them piggy, he says. They're terrible humans, terrible reporters, a terrible person. They shouldn't have a job just because they're asking about Jeffrey Epstein. This is why he gets so mad. This is why it's all redacted. This is why over and over he's called it a Democratic hoax. I just did some really good Trump supporter interviews at the Turning Point USA America Fest, the first one without Charlie Kirk. That's where we are right now. And I asked a bunch of the Trump supporters what they thought about the Epstein files being released today. And there were a few key answers that I got. There's the classic, I don't really know much about that. Like, I shit you not. A lot of the Trump supporters are saying, I don't really know much about that. I'm not really paying attention. You're not paying attention to the Epstein files? You and your conspiratorial ass cult aren't paying attention to the Epstein files? That's because Trump doesn't want you to. Or if they were paying attention, they say, I want maximum transparency, but why wouldn't Biden release the files? It's just such a lazy talking point. First of all, Biden wasn't weaponizing his Department of Justice in the same way that Donald Trump openly does. But also, the investigation was still ongoing, not only into Ghislaine Maxwell, but into Prince Andrew as well. So they couldn't just release the files or ask Merrick Garland to release the files. It's all a misunderstanding. But the Trump supporters are locked in such an alternate reality that their two go-tos are either, I haven't heard of that, or what about Biden? Or why wouldn't Biden do this? Or what about the Biden administration? They are so lost, and we have to continue to hammer this message home every single day. The most powerful man on the planet is abusing his position to cover up his own alleged acts decades ago. The most powerful man on the planet isn't focusing on you or your family. He's not focusing on affordability or getting prices down or healthcare or any of the 10, 20 issues that are at the top of people's lists. He's not focusing on that. Donald Trump is focused on protecting himself, protecting the richest elites, the Epstein class, and hanging on to power. It's that simple, and I'll leave it there. If you made it this far, drop a blue heart, drop a like. I love you all. I'll see you later. Peace out.